I really can't talk on their ratings, but in some way, shape, form, or fashion, we are entertainers of who we are. And our influence ranks second to none in at this time of the year. When you come out in blue cleats, or when you come out in white cleats, gold cleats, whatever cleats, when you come out and do a certain dance, people are watching. The league has to understand it's entertaining for people to see that from a touchdown celebration. I mean, I found myself last night trying to see what Odell Beckham is going to do for his end zone celebration. And just the little nuances of the game of football, people can't get enough of it. I know I can't.
And bringing the dad back, how about it? So he's suggesting, obviously, the NFL should allow celebrations after being asked about the sinking TV ratings. You think he's got a point?
He's absolutely right on the money. These are the kind of things that gravitate a young generation towards you. You must remember, and not only that, the NFL can't be hypocritical. You can't build off of something and then forget it once you've arrived, just because you may not like it. Billy White Shoes Johnson, primetime Deion Sanders, Devin Hester, and all of those folks in between. They did a lot. Michael Irvin to a lesser degree. The list goes on and on. People did their celebrations. And you see kids, the younger generation, gravitating towards that. And not just the younger generation. By the way, not just the minority community as well. You saw white kids doing that. You saw white coaches doing that. I mean, when Dabo Swinney, did you see him dabbing?
Yeah,
when he was trying to dab? When you see kids at North Carolina trying to dab, even though that kid from North Carolina did a poor job of doing it, but it was funny. You just see a lot of these things.
You feel a part of it.
There is a difference between celebrating and taunting. And there is nothing wrong, I want to emphasize, there's nothing wrong with the NFL sitting there and saying, we don't want you taunting. But there's nothing wrong with them saying that. But having said that, there's also nothing wrong with players celebrating, because it magnetizes you towards the product. I'm telling you, I wanted to see, I mean, it was electrifying to watch Primetime return a punt or return an interception. Wasn't just because you wanted to see the play. You wanted to see him high-stepping into the end zone,
There's
man.
nothing like
There was nothing
people
like
still
it.
do it.
There's nothing like someone like Deion Sanders or Muhammad Ali or someone who just does something better and different than everyone else,
Conor
feeling
McGregor.
themselves afterward, of course, because it's like the expression of their ego, and it's not unfettered, and how many of us in life get to do that, right? So I agree with that, and basically it's not just along racial or cultural lines in terms of more puritanical versus less puritanical. It's also generational, as you said. The youth culture affecting the kind of norms of the older generation who, of course, don't like the fact that their view of things is getting displaced. It's going to happen in the NFL, too. Of course, Cam is right about that. But, and I know he's not standing up at the podium because he wants to. He has to, you know, talk. It's just when you're 3-6 and you're losing, a lot of people are going to hear that like, man, I'm not trying to hear that from Cam Newton right now. Last year when he was like, if you want me to stop celebrating, stop me from scoring. And people are like, yup, he's right.
But we got on him for
3-6.
not having fun, right, when he was losing. And now at least he's trying to have fun.
Wait a minute. I actually disagree with you strongly with the statement you just made. The fact that he's up there talking about the celebrations in the league and how it may have had a detrimental effect on ratings because of the league's willingness to micromanage, it's easy to say that when he's winning. The fact that he's saying that in the throes of losing, I got no problem with that, because to me, you know, he could be spoiled and not want to address anything like that because they're losing, but he was still willing to do it. Let's also point this out. The league is micromanaging, and I want to make sure I emphasize this. The league itself, we can't point along, minorities, white guys living up top and running the show. Wait a minute, you got Troy Vincent up in there and a host of African Americans that the NFL is employing that play a role in influencing the league in terms of how much of a heavy hand they bring down upon these issues. So it's collectively, they've all drawn this conclusion. We haven't said enough about the Players Association, whether it's an issue like this, whether it's the Kaepernick issue or what have you. These are guys that represent the players. And I don't hear DeMaurice Smith practically on any damn thing. And it would be nice to hear his voice, for him to remind us that he does actually have the job of representing the players, to speak up about some of these issues, it really would be nice.
I want to address
really
the
would be
Cam
nice.
point about him being consistent. It's easy to do it when you're winning, harder to do it when you're losing. I'm not talking about whether he has the right, from my point of view, to do it, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm talking about the way it's going to be received by many people. It's going to be, because celebrations are a superficiality. They are the packaging that it's wrapped in. And while that's important, coming from a guy who's 3-6, when he makes the point about the kind of superficial stuff, it will resonate with many people like, look, you know, deliver the goods. Don't worry about the superficialities of it all. I think that's the way it will be received by many.
That's fair. But the thing I took away, this kid's 27 years old, and he's saying, I can't wait to see what Odell Beckham's doing. So
Right.
what are other, he's got a lot on his plate. What are other 20-somethings saying? They want to see it. They want to see the flavor.
It annoyed folks when T.O. celebrated. You trying to tell me you didn't gravitate to when he said, get your popcorn ready?
I love my
So we want to see it. Thursday night football, the Saints come marching in. Bring it, Cam.
T.O. was dancing with the cheerleaders through the popcorn.
It was the best.
Lovely.
But the important thing is he balled out in the Super Bowl on one leg.
Of course.
That's why you love T.O. The other stuff is great, but that's not why you love him.
That's the gravy. Coming up with this subject, and I want to address the Mike Evans angle that you brought up. So in a protest of Donald Trump being elected president, Bucs wide receiver Mike Evans chose to sit for the national anthem on Sunday. On Tuesday, he had a change of heart, telling our Josina Anderson this. I want to start by apologizing to all the U.S. military members, their families, and the fans who I offended by my actions on Sunday. It was never my intention, as I have tremendous respect for the men and women who serve our country. I have very strong emotions regarding some of the many issues that exist in our society today. I chose to sit as an expression of my frustration towards this year's election. It was very personal for me, as it was for so many Americans. With that being said, I will not sit again during the national anthem because I want to focus my efforts on finding more effective ways to communicate my message and bring about change by supporting organizations and movements that fight for equal rights for minorities. Evans indicated on Instagram that, like Colin Kaepernick, he didn't vote. So, Stephen A., you are very hard on Colin Kaepernick for the same thing. Does Evans look better or worse right now?
Well, I think he looks better, but he doesn't look good. He doesn't look as bad as Colin Kaepernick because he didn't instigate a national dialogue and cause a national divide by the position that he took. He reacted to a result he didn't like, and whether we agree or disagree with it, in the end, it just wasn't consistent with what he's saying his position is, because he's saying we can't stand for this, we need to change, but you did nothing to facilitate that change. In the case of Colin Kaepernick, I believe it was the Sacramento Bee, correct me if I'm not sure I'm accurate about this, but I believe it was the Sacramento Bee who revealed that even before the protest, Colin Kaepernick hadn't even registered to vote. You didn't register to vote. You take a position where you kneel for the national anthem. You want to bring attention to it. You're talking about you won't change until there's change, but you did nothing to facilitate change when it really, really counts. There is nothing, absolutely, positively nothing. Our historians, particularly individuals within the African-American community, will be the first to tell you there is no instrument that we have available to us to provoke change more powerful than to vote. When you combine that with the fact that you've got guys like James Carney and Goodwin and Schwerber, individuals from the civil rights era in 1964 in Mississippi, they made the movie Mississippi Burning out of it. These three individuals were abducted and murdered. Took 44 days to find their bodies while they were trying to get African Americans to register to vote in the South. You know something about your history. That's right. You know something about your history, and you turn around and you ignore all of that, and you slap historians in the face like that by not electing to vote and then going to announce to the world that you don't vote. That is shameful. It's unforgivable.
But Mike Evans
did not do that.
No, but Mike Evans looks worse than Kaepernick.
Okay, how?
Because Kaepernick's position to me seems naive. The idea that there's an equivalency between candidates and it wouldn't have an effect on black or brown lives that he claims matter is, to me, naive and misinformed, that, maybe is a better way to say it. But Mike Evans looks worse here because at least Kaepernick was consistent. Even as pressure came, he stuck to his guns. Now, he eventually went from sitting to kneeling after discussion, with a member of the armed services who wanted to appeal to his sense of patriotism, if not nationalism. Hey, people are going to misinterpret this as you're saying something against the military. Kaepernick said, okay, let's come to a compromise where my conscience is okay, but I'm not offending people as much. I don't see that as the same kind of backing down as Mike Evans here. Let's look at this. Mike Evans didn't vote. He is a public figure in a swing state. In fact, more than anything, that swung the election, Florida. Now, he votes in Texas, a red state, but he's a public figure in a swing state who doesn't vote and now makes it public that he didn't vote.
Afterward.
Yeah, afterward, that's true. Still, it's apathetic. He stands up for his principles at first, not in a general way. He's protesting Trump specifically.
Right.
And the message there is, I'm not going to allow this kind of behavior that we saw in the election, the kind of things that Trump said, be normalized in American life because a lot of people voted for him. I'm going to stand up to that. Well, good for you. That's standing up for you. Oh, wait, there's a little bit of pressure. There's a little bit of backlash. Okay, I'll sit back down again. That looks doubly bad because he doesn't vote, public figure in a swing state, votes in a red state, so, maybe it remains red because people like him who feel that way aren't voting, and then backs down as soon as there's a little pressure.
He backed down. It wasn't that he backed down, in my opinion, because of the pressure. He backed down because he realized how hypocritical his position looked because he hadn't voted and he was doing more harm than good to the very cause he was addressing. That's realizing the error of your ways and standing down. In the case of, and not only that, especially when your protest is of a specific individual and the rhetoric that he was spewing, that's entirely different. In the case of Colin Kaepernick, you essentially indicted a nation. You talked about the United States of America. You had a problem with what this country stands for, what it is about. You questioned whether or not it was living up to the values it spews, and then turned around and confessed that even though you felt that way and took that position, in the same place, you took no stance when it comes to activating and exercising your inalienable right to create the change you said you wanted. That is much worse than Michael Evans. That is much worse than Mike Evans.
There was a teaching moment here that Mike Evans could have participated in had he said, instead of backing down because he appeared hypocritical, I made a mistake. I didn't vote. I disenfranchised myself in a sense already.
He did that with his actions.
I will not make that mistake again. And now what I can do is at least stand up and protest.
And I'm telling you, he did that with his actions. What the hell has Colin Kaepernick done? He sat up there, took a position.
No, he looks like he caved now, Mike Evans.
You might say he looked like he caved, but the point is he stood down because he recognized he made a mistake. The bottom line is Colin Kaepernick saw absolutely nothing wrong with not voting. Absolutely nothing wrong without provoking the change that you asked other people to join you in trying to create. There's nothing more worse or more hypocritical than that. Colin Kaepernick should be ashamed of himself.
Mike Evans had ashamed of himself to make an optimal choice, and he made a way suboptimal choice.
Mike Evans just realized he stood down because he realized he made a mistake. Colin Kaepernick is the flaming hypocrite. Flaming hypocrite.
The bottom line is your vote matters, and I hope that our country realizes this in hindsight of the election and does that moving forward. I know I sound like a Monday morning quarterback, but that's the truth.